Howdy, hey, how is everybody doing, and welcome back to Disney Daily. After watching Raya and the Last Dragon, there are a lot of questions that I am left with, but the ones concerning me the most have to do with Sisu the dragon. So today I'm going to try to understand and explain Sisu's fate, but more specifically her death. Now in the movie we see Sisu die, or so we think, after being struck by the arrow, but I am curious, did Sisu actually die, or was she just injured and the water somehow healed her? Well, let's get into it. Now for those who need a little refresher, here is the scene I'm referring to. It is towards the end of the film when Raya and her misfit friends meet up with Namaari to try and assemble the dragon gem. Everyone is under the impression at first that Namaari has had a change of heart and now wishes to help reassemble the gem, or so it seems. Just as Raya and Sisu reach for the other pieces of the gem, Namaari pulls out a weapon and points it directly at Sisu, who is shot by the arrow released from the weapon and falls directly into the water. When she falls into the water, we see that the water starts to dissipate through the lands, which I think is very symbolic. You see, if the last water dragon dies, so too does the water. Now let's jump into my first theory I had after watching the movie. Initially, I thought Sisu didn't die. She was just injured, and once she fell directly into the water, she was kept alive and then rehabilitated by the water. After all, we learned that Sisu was a water dragon. I think the water was as much a part of Sisu as Sisu was a part of the water. And I think we can actually see just how closely bonded to water Sisu actually is in the beginning of the film. You see, when Raya first discovers Sisu at the shipwreck, we see when Raya enters the wreck that a little stream of water is running through the sand around her. After Raya begins to sing a song, Sisu manifests in front of her through the use of water. Water bubbles begin to literally float up into the air, and as they start to combine with one another, Sisu is shown in her physical dragon form. So this led me to believe that water was not only her magic, it could also house her and perhaps heal her too. And while this was a fun interpretation that I took away from the movie, it was actually quickly debunked when I read director Don Hall's explanation for Sisu's death. In an interview, he confirms that Sisu does actually die, and that was never a question. He explains that Sisu was always going to die, but there was some back and forth about whether or not she and the other dragons would actually return at the end of the movie. So in the director's own words, it is revealed that she actually does die. And while that did answer one question, that doesn't answer my follow-up question, which is, how was she able to come back from the dead? I mean, that sounds like a pretty challenging task, even for a dragon. Well, I believe it was a combination of the water and all of the dragon's magic. Now let me explain. At the end of the movie, the dragons come together and do what almost looks like a dance in the skies above Kumandra. As the dragons glide through the air, it looks as though they are releasing some of their magic over the water. As the magic begins to sprinkle into the water, we see the water begin to rise, small at first, and then a huge ball of water rises up right in the middle of the dragon formation, and Sisu manifests again through the use of water, like we saw in the beginning of the film. In my opinion, after watching this scene more closely, I think it was a combination of all of the dragon's magic and her bond to the water that led to Sisu's return to the living. Additionally, I think the dragons knew that Sisu could come back if they utilized her magic as well, which was now very much part of the water since that's what she fell into. And as far as what Sisu's life would look like after her resurrection, well, I think it's pretty simple. It would consist of a lot of happiness, love, and most importantly, confidence. Sisu had become the dragon her siblings always knew she could be. Well, that concludes this episode of Disney Daily. My question for you all today is, what is your explanation for how Sisu was able to come back to life? Please leave that down in the comments. As always, thanks for being my guest here at Disney Daily. Until next time.